Alright, time for the whitest person you know to go into the historical period that he has zero knowledge or context of. Alright, hey guys, so this is the Woman Cane, which is the latest. I apologize if this light is horrible, I can't actually tell because the sun's partially blocking the camera. Although I guess it looks okay if I'm just rambling. Anyway, Woman Cane. So yeah, the Woman Cane is the latest movie starring Viola Davis and a bunch of other actors whose name I don't know off the top of my head. Mostly Viola Davis because I love Viola Davis and John Boyega. And those are the only two names I know. I apologize again, but historically names are not my strong suit. Anyway, which is about, I'm just gonna have to Google the plot synopsis, because it has a lot of names I just do not know off the top of my head. But anyway, it is about a woman, a army in Africa, called the Agoji, which is like kind of this like ultra warrior unit, who are like these just supremely trained, supremely hardened badasses who can just fuck things up, and that exists between the 17th and 19th century. We said in the 1800s, so it's a lot of very much of early colonial... Would that be colonial age? Whatever. Either way, so basically, slave trade's alive and well. Here is basically what it boils down to. And Viola Davis plays the general of this army who is working under John Boyega, who's a new king that just came under the rule. Meanwhile, there's all these kind of rival tribes and armies and factions that are kind of teaming up to attack this place again. What the fuck is Dahomey? That's what it's called. To attack Dahomey because. Why do they? Because historical reasons that I don't fully know. Now, right out the bat, I do think there's some important things to acknowledge about this movie just in general. One, of course, this has made the white man mad, because of course it did. It's about an army of powerful black women. Of course it made white people angry, in the order of you bombing the shit out of it. But outside of that usual crap, which is all just a pile of nothing, typically, this movie has been gaining a fair amount of flack for historical inaccuracies, which is something I usually point out. I'm not going to give this movie as much flack for that as I usually do, and there's a couple very specific reasons why, and I'll get into that. But the main criticism I've been hearing about this, I feel like comes from people who haven't actually seen the movie, because I don't know the history of Dahomey, I don't know the history of the Agoji, and I apologize for mispronouncing anything, but I'm not going to pretend to be a scholar in any of this. This is a historical blind spot for me. I don't know anything about this stuff. But I do know that the Dahomey was, like, in fact, involved in the slave trade back in the 1800s, which is, like, I think something that people were giving this movie flack for not addressing or not dealing with or not talking about. And I feel like people who have those criticisms didn't actually watch the movie and are just repeating whatever hate bait, clickbait bullshit that people are telling to be mad about, because that's easy way to get likes, and people just spread the misinformation like fire. Because a big part of this movie is the fact that Dahomey is involved in the slave trade, and it's a constant crisis of faith that Viola Davis has with John Boyega. Quite often, there's quite a few conversations around it. Now, I'm not saying it's historically accurate, because even by both Viola Davis and John Boyega's accounts, it's not. It's definitely not trying to be. It is very much. It is a blockbuster movie with the historical lens in mind. So, like, outside. For all intents and purposes, I'm going in this with the assumption that a lot of the actual events that surround this story are probably bullshit, because it is a blockbuster, and I think that's an important distinction to make with something as opposed to like Elvis, which is a biopic, and not quite, like, I guess you can make the argument of blockbuster, but definitely not in the same vein. And I think, because I gave Elvis a lot of grief for being historically inaccurate and not true to the real story, and I'm trying to figure, like, why is it a problem there but not as much of a problem here? And the conclusion I've kind of come to is the fact that this movie doesn't feel like, even from the get-go, that it's trying to be any kind of like educational platform for this particular story. It does feel very much like very much beat for beat, this is a blockbuster story that just happens to be inspired by real factions that existed. Now, granted, I don't think it absolves it from the responsibility I feel that popular culture has when telling stories based on true events, which is that regardless of its intent or how accurate it wants to be, or inaccurate it wants to be, or how fictionalized or non-fictionalized it wants to be, it is just gonna be a fact that most people watching the movie are not going to follow up and learn the actual facts behind it. A lot of people are going to take these stories at face value, and they do. And I always cite Amadeus as like the prime example of that. For those who don't know, Amadeus was the movie, like the only movie made about Mozart because it was just that fucking good. But it created a fictional rivalry between Mozart and another musician, Salieri. That never exists in real life. And yet if you ask people who don't like have the background on that, it's a popular belief that they had that rivalry even though it never existed. So like that's a case where, granted in comparison, like historical harms, there's much worse to do, but I do think like you do have to acknowledge the fact that many people are going to take whatever you put on the film at face value, and I do think you have a responsibility to be careful with what you put on there. Now, granted, the Woman King, in comparison to something like Amadeus or Elvis, plays everything else to such a wide degree. Like I said, this really does feel like a modern-day blockbuster, right down to the action beats and the story beats and the character beats, and everything follows like almost too cleanly of an arc for it to be anything but fictionalized, and I feel like smart audiences will pick up on that. Not that I'm saying a lot of audiences are smart, because that's definitely up for debate. But that being said, I feel like this one is easier to take on its face value because it's not trying to be anything different. Again, like, there's definitely nuances you can have in that discussion. And like, there's definitely some cases where, like, yeah, I get that this is a very romanticized viewpoint of this period of history and this period of history in Africa. I have no doubt that a lot of it is definitely played up much more, like, honor-based or, like, with much more virtue than it probably existed in real life. Or maybe it did. I don't know. I maybe thinking that it can't be that way it's a very cynical mindset. But either way, I guess what I'm trying to say here is because I do recognize what this is trying to be, which is not Oscar bait. It is a blockbuster film, that it definitely lives up to different standards. So keep in my mind when anything I say about this movie, I do feel like I need to address out the back because I feel like it's important to address. Now, the movie itself is very good. It's a very good film. It's for like general story beats. This movie, like, it has Viola Davis as obviously Niska. I hope I'm saying that right. I'm probably not. Who is this? Of course, it's getting review bombed because, of course, it is. White people will never not be mad about shit like this. How dare you have women be like strong and powerful in your movies? But yeah. Anyway, outside of that, it's also about this woman named Nawi who is the daughter of this farmer who can't sell her off to any husband because she's too rebellious. She doesn't want to put up with any crap. So he gives her away to the basically woman Marines, who, yeah, from there it's basically just like, oh God, what's the name of the fucking army force again? A Goyi boot camp for about, I want to say, the first half of this. And you get to all these characters before it gets into this war they provoked with these nearby tribes, because they definitely are much more gun-ho about the slave trade, and Viola Davis and John Boyega kind of want to start pushing themselves away from it, even though they do acknowledge that a lot of the reason why their tribe is wealthy and successful is because of the slave trade. It does involve a lot of politics like that. Now, this movie does kind of take the clean route in this discussion, where all characters, like all the good guys, are pretty invested in getting out of the slave trade, and they're very much pushing towards that. And a lot of the commentary around them also surrounds security's passing by me. I'm trying to avoid their attention right now. I'm in a mall parking lot right now, and they have tended to issue that in the past, but I'm rambling. yeah. So, oh yeah, slave trade. So like, it very much like, of course, everyone has the right to be free. The traditional messaging you expect this kind of message, and it's all correct. I'm not saying it's not, but again, that's kind of cue to me. It's like, okay, this is a blockbuster movie. This is a case where the slave traders get their comeuppance. Everything resolves very cleanly and very neatly. Everyone gets the happy ending, which again is not a bad thing, but it's definitely, for my cue to me, it's like, okay, there's no way this movie's entirely historically accurate, because this movie wants to be entertaining. It wants you to feel good at the end of it. It wants you to make you feel like you're in for the right people, and everyone like has good intentions and does the right thing, and we all want that, and that's the point of stories like this. That being said, I'm willing to bet the reality behind this was a lot messier. I'm getting sidetracked, but I always am. But yeah, like, other than that, like, the movie itself, outside of historical beats, it's well shot, it's well directed, the cinematography is gorgeous, the acting is fantastic, everyone knocks it out of the park. The mythology they build around these women warriors is fantastic, and the way they build them up and just kind of show these boot camp rituals and this training procedures is all really cool and interesting, well designed. Like, it's nice to see John Boyega get more work. I'm happy to see him here. He puts in a good performance. There's some like political. I'm trying to get not too much into spoilers, because there is like some big character beats happen halfway through. That does lead to a very touching third act, and I really liked Viola Davis's arc in the film. Without going too much into spoilers, is basically her realizing that a lot of her super hard survival of the fittest ideals are wrong, and it's not like a way to actually be strong, and vulnerability is okay in certain contexts and stuff like that. I like that arc for her. I think she, like, it's Viola fucking Davis. No matter what she does, it's gonna be great. Like, she's gonna be great in it. The rest of the movie could be fucking dog shit, and she's gonna be great in it. Viola Davis is hands down one of the best actresses of our time, and she doesn't get nearly enough credit. That being said, everyone else does a really good, like, everyone else does a fantastic job. I'm trying to think of what else I can say without going to spoilers. The action scenes are very well shot. They're very entertaining. They do some really cool stuff with weaponry. I'm always going to be a fan of just one mass of people and one other mass of people just going smush in a way that's not pornographic. I realized that after I said it. Although maybe. I don't know. I amuse myself. But yeah, it's a rock solid blockbuster. I think it's very entertaining. I walked away thoroughly entertained. I got invested in all the characters. It's pretty easy to predict where the story is going for the most part. I could have done without the love subplot personally. I kind of felt that was unnecessary, and I don't want to say it goes nowhere, because yeah, this movie does have a romance subplot between one character who is like half white, half Dahomey, and who kind of comes back to explore his family roots and all that stuff, and then he meets Naui, and they kind of have a thing going on there. It kind of ultimately goes nowhere, because it kind of has to. But that, like, even then, like, the guy was fine, very chiseled. I respect that. Very, very attractive. Like, I get the appeal. That being said, like, it is hard with stories like this, because you have to be careful not to humanize colonizers too much to the point of apologia, and this movie doesn't. Like, everyone who like has their comeuppance coming gets their comeuppance, and yeah, it's satisfying. It is a satisfying 2-hour blockbuster. It probably could have trimmed down just a little shorter, but what really kind of elevates it beyond just like, yeah, it was a fine blockbuster, is probably Viola Davis's performance and the chemistry she has with Naui. They work very well off each other, and the way their stories eventually accumulate is very touching and very warm, and I really liked how it ended. But yeah, other than that, like, I had a good time. I was entertained. It's a very good movie. Don't think it'll make my top 10, but I was entertained for what I saw. I think you need to go into it knowing what it is, and I don't think it tries to hide what it is. I don't think there's any deceptive practices there. Would have been nice to have more historically accurate? Yeah, totally. Is it bad that it isn't? In this particular context, I'm gonna say no. I would have more issue with it if it tried to hide the fact that Dahomey was was involved in the slave trade at all. Like, if they tried to hide that fact and like brush it under the rug, I would have much stronger opinions about it. But it doesn't. It makes that part of the narrative. It does make a point to acknowledge it many times, and not just acknowledge it, but actually talk about it, have discussions around it, and point out that it's something like, yeah, for obvious reasons, not a lot of people are comfortable with. So yeah, I think it does exactly what it wants to do. I think it does what it needs to do, and I think it's worth watching if you want to explore a story about kick-ass African women. Yeah. I think that's all we have to say about it without going to spoilers. So yeah, I think there's still a lot coming out that I still gotta watch. I think the Olivia Wilde movie, which is gonna be its own, yikes. What's the movie called? Like, Welcome, Darling, or something like that? I don't know. Either way, the movie has turned into quickly from a very promising feature into an absolute shit show. So that's going to be interesting to discuss next week. But in the meantime, thank you all for watching, and I will see you all later. Take care.